Order, honorable members. I can see you didn't have enough time to greet each other. We will do so as we go along. I can see you didn't have enough time to greet each other. We will do so as we go along. Order. The only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the President. Order. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their names wish to pose a supplementary question. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, among others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member or any other designated member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. The first question has been asked by Honorable G. Breitenbach. The question is about the criteria that informed his selection of the panel to make the recommendations on the appointment of the National Director of Public Prosecution. Honorable President.
Honorable members, the Constitution empowers the President to appoint the National Director of Prosecutions without stipulating any criteria to this effect. Section 179 of the Constitution states that the President has the authority and the right to appoint this key official. But although there are no requirements in law to do so, I decided to constitute a panel to assist in the process of the appointment of the NDPP in terms of calling for nominations, shortlisting candidates, and interviewing the shortlisted candidates. This is exactly similar to the process that I followed to appoint the current NDPP advocate, Shamila Batoyi. This process is transparent and helps to build public confidence in the appointment of a person in this critical office. I selected a panel that would combine a variety of skills and experiences. These include the public service, administration, financial management, legal and jurisprudence, the administration of justice, and the promotion of equality and human rights. The panel I constituted includes representatives from the National Executive, Chapter 9 institutions, and legal bodies. I chose the heads of certain of the Chapter 9 institutions for the panel because these are independent bodies that were established in terms of our Constitution to support and to protect South Africa's constitutional democracy. They are required to always act impartially and subject only to the Constitution and the law, ensuring their decisions are made without fear, favor, or prejudice. They are therefore well positioned to understand the qualities and capabilities expected of an NDPP. I've included legal practitioners in the advisory panel so that candidates are evaluated by people who have experience in the legal and criminal justice system. And in addition to their legal acumen, candidates must be able to demonstrate qualities and capabilities relating to leadership, strategic management, financial management, ethical leadership, and broad understanding of our criminal justice system. Based on their assessment, the panel will submit a short list of recommended candidates to me for consideration and appointment as empowered by the Constitution and the NPA Act. The individuals I have decided to appoint on the panel are the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Ms. Mamuloko Kubai, who will chair the panel, Mr. Andrew Christopher Nissen, the chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, Ms. Ntabiseng Sipanya Mukhale, the chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, Ms. Tsakani Maluleke, the Auditor General of South Africa, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, the chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Mr. Nkosana Mvundlela, President of the Black Lawyers Association, and Mr. Machini Mutloung, representative of the National Association of Democratic Lawyers. These are the individuals I've put and appointed on the panel that will assist me in appointing the next National Director of Public Prosecutions. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable G. Breitenbach.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, it's shocking that the panel you've appointed to recommend the Republic's next NDPP does not have any experience in prosecuting criminal cases. The NPA continues to be largely unable to prosecute important criminal matters from Amatosa, Free State asbestos, life Esidimeni, or state capture. Will you consider, Mr. President, appointing somebody that has in-depth knowledge of criminal prosecutions, somebody who understands the culture and ethos of the National Prosecuting Authority? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm always open to good ideas. And if there are people who have good and superior knowledge in criminal prosecutions, I'm willing to consider them. It's not a closed list. I can always add. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be taken by Ms. S.P. Jama.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. President, in light of your commitment to ensuring an open and transparent process in the appointment of the new National Director of Public Prosecutions, could you please share how this approach strengthens public confidence in the independence of the NPA and how lessons from the previous process will guide improvements in the forthcoming one, particularly in deepening accountability and inclusivity? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, we are a country that has become quite accustomed to having key officials being properly interviewed by a panel and being shortlisted. And that, in my view, adds to the transparency that South Africans want to see. They want to be able to assure that we do things in an open manner, in a manner that satisfies their quest for openness and transparency. So I do believe that having started this process in the appointment of the previous NDPP, we should continue. We should say that currently the law does not provide for it. This is a process that I decided on. And I've asked that the Department of Justice and Constitutional Affairs should look at how we can craft the legislation so that it becomes institutionalized and becomes embedded in our way of doing things. I think it has credibility. It did prove itself to be so in the past. And I think South Africans now expect that when we interview and when we appoint an NDPP, the president will have given good consideration, which will have been supported by what will have been the performance of those in an interview process to measure their capability and their acumen. So I do think that the transparency that the people of South Africa require is something that we should heed and ensure that it happens. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The third supplementary question will come from Honorable W.M. Douglas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President.
Order, please allow Douglas to ask his question.
Thank you very
The
much.
Gwaza or not Gwaza is not relevant now.
Thank you very much,
Can you please proceed?
Honorable Speaker. The NDPP recently complained on a television interview that there's a problem and she has fears about political interference in prosecutorial authorities. And I want to find out, has this concerns been raised with you? What are these concerns that was raised? And then, Mr. President, interference, is there?
Honorable Speaker, without interfering,
Yeah.
could you start from the beginning? I didn't quite get it. I don't want to ask you to repeat at the end.
No problem.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Douglas. You can start from the beginning.
Thank you. The NDPP complained about political interference on a TV interview a few months ago. What was this complaint about? Has she been approached to explain her fears? And have you, Mr. President, interfered in any prosecutorial decisions? Are you confident that you will not be contradicted in this matter now or in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
No, I have not had the NDPP complaining about political interference. And I do not interfere in prosecutorial matters. I have made this very clear in this very House that as President, I am not prepared to act as a prosecutor, as a policeman, as a judge, or any of those, because we have people who've been appointed to execute these tasks. My job is to make sure that those people are appointed and do their work in terms of our laws and in terms of our Constitution without any interference. There may be possibilities that there's a temptation to get involved, but I've always guarded against that I should not, because the rule of law requires that institutions should act independently without any fear or favor or prejudice. That is what I would like to repeat today. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The fourth and last supplementary question on this question will be asked by Honorable M.A. Maimane.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, let me welcome your commitment to codifying the process that you've undertaken into law. I think that's a progressive step that helps future presidents in decision-making. Now, Mr. President, you have said at the Zondo Commission that the ANC stands as accused number one. It's now common cause when you look at the Madlanga Commission that yet it's another investigation into your party. Now, along with the questions and the process that you've put forward, would it not be prudent, Mr. President, that the person who chairs the panel that you've set up be someone who's not from the ANC, perhaps within the GNU partners, in order to avoid potential conflict of interest, so that the person appointed is able to prosecute African National Congress leaders in the future should they be implicated? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President.
The appointment of key officials such as the NDPP right now that we're looking at has nothing to do with being party political. It has nothing to do with whether one is a member of the ANC or indeed any other party. The chairperson of the panel is the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. I did give quite a lot of thought to this, but ended up by saying the minister is the one who works with judges, works with prosecutors, who works with magistrates, and all of them vouch for not only that position as being neutral, but all of them vouch for the minister because of her integrity, because of her ability to do the work. And that gave me a great deal of confidence that I have a minister, and Minister Kubai, who will be able to work with the panel, not try to dominate the panel, and not try to be conflicted. The panelists that I have appointed are all people of great integrity and great eminence, and they are not about to be marginalized, to be dominated, or to be led into conflictual relationships or decisions. So whatever decision will come out of the panel will be the panel's decision. So I'm assured about that. So the minister who knows all the contours of the work that needs to be done by this key official will play a critical role as chair of the panel, so that even if they veer into areas that are not prescribed, say by rules, laws, she will be able to give guidance. And all the chair will be doing is to give guidance and to chair the meetings. And the panel itself will take decisions that will then be put forward to me. So I have full confidence in the ability of the minister to do so. By the way, even when we choose other key officials, the minister responsible for that area of work is often the one that chairs. And I've never had a complaint about the minister being conflicted or a minister trying to over-dominate the discussions in any panel. So confidence is what I have in the chair of this panel. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. We now move to the second question, number 20, which has been asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. The question is whether, in view of his constitutional obligations under Section 83 of the Constitution of the Republic, 1986, to uphold, defend, and respect the Constitution and the National Assembly's duty under Section 55, subsection 2 of the Constitution to hold the executive accountable, he, as the head of state and government, or through any minister acting on his instruction, authorized the deployment of the Special Task Force and the National Intervention Unit to Richards Bay Minerals. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, under which statutory or constitutional authority was such deployment made, whether Cabinet, Parliament, and/or any oversight body was informed or consulted prior to or after the deployment? If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what are the relevant details of the consultations? Honorable President.
It's a very long question.
It is, I'm sorry.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members.
Speaker.
Order, Honorable Mawude.
Speaker.
I can hear you. What is your point of order and under what rule?
Under point of order.
Yes, what is your point of order?
Who is the leader of the opposition? I think you've
Unfortunately, Honorable Mawude, I'll suggest that maybe you forward your question or your point of order to any of your members because we cannot hear you properly.
No, it's none of her business. It's none of anyone's
Order.
business anyway.
Honorable Sienesen.
Madam Speaker,
It's
as the former leader of the opposition, I'm a bit worried about who my successor in title is. in this House.
Honorable members, order.
Othule.
Let me explain, honorable members, that once the speaker has been appropriately informed of members of parliament and their responsibilities by their parties, we will accordingly advise. So for now, we have not been advised. Order, honorable members of MK, order. We have not been properly advised as to any changes, if any. I would allow the president, I'm sure he has taken a little bit of a break, to then answer this long question asked to him. Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, the president is not
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Reddy. Honorable
Speaker,
Reddy,
I'm not sure what rule the Honorable John Steenhuisen stood up on, because it is a procedure of the House that members must indicate the rule on which they raise.
Order. I will not entertain your point of order because it is not a point of order and it's irrelevant. Mr. President, can you please proceed?
Honorable Speaker, the president is not responsible for the authorization of the deployment of the South African Police Service Special Task Force or National Intervention Unit. Such deployments fall within the statutory and operational authority of the National Commissioner of Police of the South African Police Service. I have consequently not authorized any deployment of these teams either to Richards Bay Minerals or to any other place. Ke tlhalose sentle ka Sesotho gore mopresidente a se ena o etsang di-deployment tsa mapodisa. Di-deployment tsena di etswa ke National Commissioner ya mapodisa. Ke phetho. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. I'm informed that Honorable Mlife will take the question as a supplementary question. Order.
Speaker, Honorable Steenhuisen must focus on his first-year studies first before.
Order. Honorable member, can you proceed with the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. President, given your answer.
Order. You are taking the time of the president, and when the time lapses, some of you are going to have a problem because I will release the president. Honorable Mlife.
The President, do you concede that any deployment of specialized police or military units to protect the interests of private corporations such as Richards Bay Minerals, even if it was not done by you, but without parliamentary notification or oversight, constitute a misuse of state security resources, and it is a violation of the principle of accountability under sections 41(1)(c) and 199(7) of the Constitution? If not, on what constitutional or statutory basis do you justify the use of state force in defense of capital interest, of private capital interests? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The South African police execute their duties and functions in the protection of the people of South Africa and also the protection of the properties of the people of South Africa, including the various entities that operate businesses to drive our economy forward. And this is the task of the South African police. And where they believe that action needs to be taken, the National Commissioner is the one that directs that action should be taken. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable F. Hassan.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, thank you for that comprehensive answer and for clarifying this matter to the nation. It's okay. I know it must be difficult to be in office.
I'm protecting you, Honorable Hassan. Can you please proceed?
President Ramaphosa, Stability is critical for investor confidence and economic expansion in the mining sector, including companies operating along the Richards Bay corridor, which is essential for exports, contributes to the local economy, municipal revenues, and of course, household incomes. Given the sensitivity and exposure to economic risks of such corridors, from extortion rackets and other criminal syndicates, what government interventions are put in place to stabilize these high-risk economic nodes in the national interest? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
The South African police often does assessments of risks and dangers that the people of South Africa, including companies that operate in our country, are exposed to. And on the basis of such assessments, they are then able to deploy resources and also are able to set up teams, be they task teams or whatever type of teams, to intervene, to ensure that there is stability, that criminality is brought to an end, be it criminality of a fraud nature, corruption nature, or even extortion nature. They then deploy the teams that have the skills and the capabilities of dealing with such. Now, quite often, a number of our people, either as individuals, groups of individuals, institutions, as well as companies, will raise concerns about instability, acts of criminality in areas where they operate. And when those concerns are raised, they are passed on to the police. The police, therefore, are able to do an assessment and then to take action. And at all times, the police, in doing their work, focus on the safety of South Africans, but also on ensuring that we create a conducive environment in order for us to grow our economy and to create jobs. It is therefore important, whether it's in mining areas, township areas, rural areas, that the police are seized, continue to be seized with their task of ensuring that we live in a crime-free environment which is stable, which enhances economic investment and economic growth and job creation. That is the task of the police. And when a National Commissioner of Police, having assessed the situation, working together with his other commissioners, be they deputy commissioners, provincial commissioners, once they have made that assessment, they then are required to take action, to deploy resources, and to make sure that they curb acts of criminality of whatever nature. That is their job. And the executive supports them. It supports them in doing their work and should have oversight. Parliament should have even greater oversight through its various committees and the National Assembly and the Council of Provinces. So we have an interconnected responsibility, all of us, to deal with the challenges that our country faces. So each one of us, communities as well, through community policing forums and all that, need to take action to address all these challenges. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The third supplementary will be from Mr. J.R.B. Lorimer.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I hear what the President says about a conducive environment, and I think that's what we lack. Richards Bay Minerals contributes about 8 billion rand to the local economy every year and pays about 1 billion rand in taxes. In the last 10 years, at least 18 people have been killed amid disputes over community trust revenues, procurement contracts, job allocations, and mineral theft. Mr. President, all of this acts as a significant deterrent to people being invested in our mining industry. Does the President believe the state is doing enough to protect investors and the people they employ? And if he does, surely what I've just described shows that we're not.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lorimer. You're asking and you're answering yourself before the President answers, but I would allow the President to answer. Mr. President.
The challenges, Honorable Speaker, that Richards Bay Minerals has faced over a number of years are challenges that are known to most of us. Richards Bay Minerals has been in this country through its overseas ownership for almost 100 years. And when they have faced these challenges, workers getting killed, key managers getting killed, instability in the community, in the rural areas surrounding the mineral resource of Richards Bay. This has raised great concerns, and this has had to have various officials, from key officials like the Premier, the Minister, getting involved to see how the work of the police can be supported. But in the end, the police themselves have had to take action, have had to set up teams that will focus on what is happening there. I'd like to believe that a great deal of progress has been made and continues to be made. The theft of the mineral products, the killing of people, the instability in the community has really come down quite significantly. And this is based on reports that one keeps hearing from people who are key actors in that whole environment. So progress is being made. The situation that is being described by the honorable member is what it was, but progress is now being made. And let me add quickly, my information is it's not only Richards Bay Minerals that has been facing these problems. It's a number of companies in that complex that have faced challenges of extortion, challenges of criminality, and the police, credit to them, have been doing quite a lot of positive work to deal with those challenges. So I think we should encourage our police and give praise, if not praise, recognition for some of the work that they are doing, because we've got dedicated men and women who, having identified these types of problems, are doing something about it. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last supplementary question on this one will be asked by Honorable Carl Niels.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, you say that you do not deployments of this nature. But can you confirm whether you have since instituted any investigation to determine whether the Commissioner of Police had actually authorized the deployment of the Special Task Force and National Intervention Unit in the light of the disturbing revelations by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi? Mr. President, you are a man of influence who knows how to pull strings. Can you state whether you, any member of your family, or any of your close associates currently or in the past had any relationship or business dealings with executives, board members, or shareholders of Richards Bay Minerals or its parent companies? And if so, whether this influenced or created the perception that state security resources...
Honorable member, your time is up.
...private capital.
But can I also advise the honorable member that you have moved beyond the original question in your supplementary? So, Mr. President, you will respond to the supplementary in relation to the question. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Richards Bay Minerals is known to me. I used to be the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, and we organized workers at Richards Bay Minerals. So I've known about that company and some of the officials and managers. I don't know the current ones. I must say, though, I met the executive global chairperson at Davos a year or two ago. And he told me about the challenges that they are having. Now, what was concerning to me about that encounter, which I had with him in Davos, was that they were saying, we've been in South Africa for so long, and the challenges that we are having of criminality and our key workers and managers being killed is now tilting towards us reconsidering our presence and investment in South Africa. That concerned me. And it is that we then said, the criminality that is happening in Richards Bay Minerals does need to be dealt with. And the police must deal with it. The National Commissioner must deal with problems like that. The president does not get involved, will never say, go and do ABC. The president will say, go and do your work. And your work is to make sure that people don't get killed, products don't get stolen, and there is no instability in the community, because he even briefed me about that the shareholding processes and structures were leading to instability, infighting in the community and all that. Now, all that is unknown to me, but there are people who must deal with those issues. And all one would say is, we create an environment for you to do your work. Go ahead and do it. So you want to know whether I know about Richards Bay Minerals? Yes. I've known about Richards Bay Minerals from 1982, when I started to organize mine workers at Richards Bay Minerals. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable President. We are now moving to the third question asked by Honourable Ntuli. The question is, in light of the fact that the Republic is hosting the G20 summit, whereupon the President commissioned a G20 global report on inequality amid macroeconomic fears that global wealth and income inequality, which are already very high, are set to increase sharply. What are the envisaged outcomes that the Republic desires from the G20 summit that will reform the global financial architecture and address some of the challenges that hold back the economic growth and development of many of the developing countries, especially in Africa? Honourable President.
Honourable Speaker, South Africa's G20 presidency is being held, as we all know, under the theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. This is a theme that has been so broadly embraced by many countries that are participating in the G20 process. And in line with this theme or principles, we are working to foster a more stable, a more effective and resilient international financial architecture. The envisaged outcome of the G20 Leaders Summit, which will be held later this month, include agreement on strengthening multilateral development banks, such as the World Bank, the IMF, and the African Development Bank. This builds on the work that Brazil did when they were president of the G20, on a roadmap to make these institutions much better, more effective in helping countries to meet their sustainable development goals. We expect the summit to make a clear political commitment to address debt vulnerabilities that low-income and middle-income countries are suffering under at the moment. We want to see the issue of the cost of debt being addressed, because many countries are having to spend the income or the revenue they have largely to pay back debt and not to advance their people's developmental needs, such as education, health, and many others, and infrastructure. These debt vulnerabilities contain their fiscal space, their ability to address poverty and inequality, and their capacity to invest in growth and development. The Johannesburg Leaders Declaration, as we will call it, is expected to include a commitment to further strengthen the implementation of the G20 Common Framework for debt treatments in a predictable, timely, and coordinated manner. Now, we are hoping that we will have a declaration. If not a declaration, we will have a declaration by sufficient consensus. And if not that, we hope that the chairman's statement will be able to encompass the various consensus points that have been reached during the course of the whole year, as we have held various meetings around various sectors. This declaration will urge the international community to support vulnerable countries with a strong reform agenda whose debt is sustainable, but they are countries that are also facing liquidity challenges. Now, related to this, the summit is expected to support efforts to strengthen the global financial safety net and enhance representation of developing economies in the major and key decision-making centers of the international economic and financial world. There will also be a focus on promoting sustainable capital flows to emerging markets and foster sound policy frameworks and central bank independence as well. South Africa is presiding over the G20 at a time when the world is faced with increasing wealth and income inequalities. It was against this background that we established the G20 Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts on Global Wealth Inequality, chaired by Professor Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel laureate. The committee submitted their report to me earlier this week, providing a comprehensive analysis of global inequality and recommending specific actions that leaders need to take to bring about fundamental changes. Now, these actions will include the reform of the economic rules at an international level, such as redesigning intellectual property rules and rewriting tax rules to ensure fair taxation of multinationals and the ultra-wealthy. So the national actions could also include pro-worker regulation, reducing corporate concentration. They have identified that monopolies that operate in various countries do tend to stifle growth, do tend to stifle the growth of many other businesses. They also deal with how large capital gains taxes should be imposed, or capital tax should be imposed, how we should invest in public services, and also the report recommends new models for cooperation between countries, for instance, on taxes and others. So a key recommendation, though, is what they suggest should be done, to set up a new international and independent panel that will monitor inequality trends and also ensure that policymakers do pay attention to the issue of inequality. It is argued that in recent years, we have set up the climate change institution, which has been manifesting itself with conference of the parties, the COP1, COP28, COP30. There's now a COP that's taking place in Brazil. But they say that an age-old problem, which is inequality, has not had such focus globally. And they therefore suggest that we should set up a commission or an institution that will focus on inequality. That has great resonance with me, because if we were to do that, we would be able to focus the world's attention on inequality and how we should take steps to reduce inequality. So, Honorable Chairperson, the G20 process that we are involved in as South Africa, as its presidency, should lead to fundamental changes on a number of areas and have a legacy impact in terms of the issues and priorities that we have identified. So we're looking forward to the G20 taking place in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and South Africa being able to give leadership to the world on a number of issues that we've been dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be taken by Honorable D. Mpapane.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, thank you for your comprehensive response to this question. Indeed, developing countries on the African continent face unsustainable debt burdens with high borrowing costs, crowding out vital domestic resources and diverting them away from development needs. This holds back economic growth. The UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the AU's Agenda 2063 cannot be realized unless the challenges of debt and development are addressed more coherently and strategically. People's futures, especially those of young Africans, depend on it. Given that you have responded, what is it that you will be doing as South Africa's presidency of the G20? In addition to that, to what extent are you going to support the restructuring of African countries as a measure to reform the global financial architecture? I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, one of the good things that we've been able to achieve as Africa is to get the African Union to be a member of the G20. Africa being a member of the G20 ensures that we put the issues not only of Africa, but the global South on the global agenda, to have those matters discussed and the challenges that countries in the global South, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are facing. Now, that is one specific issue that we've been able to succeed on. Now, we're hoping to record more successes by, for instance, getting the debt burden of many African countries being addressed, the cost of capital. African countries in the main pay much more for their debt than the countries in the Northern Hemisphere. And we say this is unfair, this needs to be brought to an end, and fortunately that is being listened to. And we therefore want a discussion in that regard. Our continent is the reservoir of critical minerals, and we've put the issue of critical minerals on the agenda. Forever and in a day, African countries have just been extractors of minerals, raw minerals that are taken to other locales around the world for beneficiation or for value addition. We've put it on the agenda to ensure or to insist that Africa must now become the center of manufacturing, of adding value to the critical minerals that we have. And that message has been heeded, and now there is talk in many centers of the world that need these minerals, that we should no longer just be carting rock, soil, and dust to those areas. We should now be adding value. And of course, in order for us to do so, we've got to improve our own infrastructure, our energy capability, our transport, our logistics. So all these factors then combine to put Africa on the map so that we can get cheaper finance, to be able to embark on infrastructure development, to be able to get our mineral resources to be processed at source, so that communities where these minerals are found are able to benefit. Hitherto, communities have just seen companies from offshore just coming to dig up the soil and taking the minerals and cutting them off without them benefiting in any shape or form. Now, we have put this issue on the table. It is going to be discussed at the G20, and we're hoping and trusting that there will be a clear declaration about how this type of matter should be dealt with. Another matter, without taking too much of your time, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the impact of climate change. Countries in the global South, particularly in Africa, have been suffering from climate damage which they have not been responsible for. And that climate damage has devastated many countries on a repeated basis. Their roads, bridges, and other public infrastructure has always been damaged. We've put that on the agenda. and said that there must be good finance for recovery. There must also be good finance for a just transition, as all of us seek to address the issues of development. So we, through the G20 process, have sought to advocate for addressing the challenges that many of our countries in the global south, especially in Africa, are facing. So the participation of the AU in G20 has enhanced our position because it is no longer South Africa as a lone member of the G20 that articulates these issues. It is now the AU itself that also articulates these matters. So we are making progress.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do think, Honorable Lotred, you would have to have another workshop on digital technologies and how such must be used. Initially, I thought it was the case of born before technology. But now, Mr. President, I'm sure you heard and other people having conversation unintended. So next time, this parliament will have a workshop to just address those matters so that we are in order when you answer your questions. Honorable R. Smith.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, one of the major contributors to inequality and economic instability is corruption and failed local government. The G20 summit is being held in Johannesburg, a city that epitomizes South Africa's own inequality and economic instability at the hands of a corrupt local government run for decades by your party. Many Johannesburg residents are, to use your words, shocked to see areas such as Sandton and Nasrec and main arterial roads being fixed and upgraded as part of a beautification campaign by national government so as not to embarrass the ANC in front of G20 delegates when they arrive. Can you explain to the residents of Johannesburg why the state of their city suddenly matters to national government when the world is watching, but not when they have languished without water, electricity, and basic service delivery for the past decade?
Order, Honorable President.
Honorable Speaker, we are going to have visitors. And let us all be united in making sure that we welcome our visitors. And as they leave, we must then insist that what we have done and seen done must continue. I have been one of those who has expressed my displeasure, my anger, my dissatisfaction with the state of the city that I was born in and grew up in. I've driven around the city, sometimes at night, sometimes during the day, and have seen how that city has, with others, to set up the presidential working group. We did that for eThekwini. When I had gone to eThekwini and had seen what eThekwini looked like and had met the business community who asked that we should take action, and we did. It's being turned around. And I've been to a number of other cities, including here in Cape Town, where many people live, been in the more affluent areas, and a lot of work that needs to be done all around. Our local government situation is not pleasing at all. We must all admit that. But rather than navel-gazing and pointing fingers, I call on all of us to stand up and do something. Improve our cities, our local government, rather than pontificate and say, no, you're doing this because visitors are coming. And of course, when in any household, when visitors come, they do a cleaning up. They clean up. They clean up. And I've just come back, when the member is listening, I've just come back from Indonesia, Jakarta. I've come back from Vietnam. I've come back from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. They all looked flawless, clean. I went to the G20 also in New Delhi 2 years or 3 years ago, and they had spruced up the city. You could see that this was done because visitors were coming. So when visitors come, we use that as a good stepping stone and a benchmark. The mayor himself and the premier have said that now that we have reached this level, we don't want to fall back and go back to what Johannesburg was. And I do believe that, and we are going to use this as a benchmark to improve. You will recall how our cities and towns looked like before the 2010 World Cup. What did we do? We folded our sleeves, all of us, developed many of our key towns, built stadiums, built roads, and those are still there. And similarly, we can do the same even now. So I want you to join me one day to go and clean up one of the streets along which the visitors are going to travel, you and I, so that we make it look better. So I hope you will join me.
Thank you, Honorable President. The next follow-up question will be from Mariam Mohammed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, I feel very sorry. Maybe you'll need to go on another retreat so your GNU partners can read the brief again. Anyway, since your election as President of the Republic, a country that is reputed to have the highest inequality in the world, what have you done to reduce inequality in South Africa, Mr. President? And what have been the results? I thank you.
Honorable President.
When democracy dawned in our country in 1994, poverty and inequality was extremely high. And over the 30 years and slightly more, we have done a great deal, much more, I would say, than many other countries have. You know, you just go to housing. I've been around a number of countries and I always ask, do you give houses for free to your people? All the countries say, no, we don't. We do it here in South Africa. And I've often asked myself, are we so different from any other countries? We built between 3.5 million to 4 million houses. We had to do it to deal with inequality and poverty. And I often ask, to what extent has electricity penetrated in your country? Particularly on our continent or in the global south, it hovers around the 50% or so. When the democratic order came in our country, electricity penetration was very low. We are now at 93%. What has that done? It has dealt with the inequality and the poverty. It has helped to empower our people. You go to rural areas, people now switch on. I used to go to my grandmother's home with a thatch roof. She didn't have electricity. Much later, she had electricity as I visited her. And I recorded in my heart that this is progress. We are improving on an ongoing basis. Of course, what holds us back is our resources. We don't have the plentiful resources. But what also holds us back is our history, because the poverty and inequality that we have has a history. Professor Stiglitz's report says we need to focus on the history of inequality, what has caused inequality, and address that. And quite often, we are just glib. We just say, yeah, there's inequality. It's like inequality just happened yesterday. It has a history. And we are dealing with that history to turn back the pages of a horrible past where there was inequality, where there was injustice, and where there was no fairness. This is what we are doing. In the end, even Stats SA now says Many people in South Africa now live in formal houses. Formal houses, you don't find that plentiful on our continent. So poverty has reduced. Inequality, we still struggle with because it is the most stubborn of all the challenges that we face. But we keep going. We're not standing in one place. And I have confidence that with the measures that we are taking of improving the various aspects of South African people's lives, we will be able to deal with inequality. South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. It was engineered. It was designed like that. And all the determinants that are meant to make people more equal, like education, healthcare, and property, were actually destroyed in this country. We're rebuilding that. We're giving our people opportunities and hope. And we will improve the lives of our people. We may not do it in our lifetime, but it will happen. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary on this question will be taken by Honorable S.S. Zibi.
Inkosi mhlali ngaphambili. Mongameli, ngicela ukubuza ukuba kolu dushe lwenziwa ngumongameli Trump kwezorhwebo ngalanto okuthiwa zi-tariffs. Ingaba azoba khona na amazwe awoneleyo kule G20 avumelana ngokurhwebelana ngokusemthethweni noxa i-United States isenza zonke inzame zokuba le summit izayo ingajongelwa ntweni. Inkosi mhlali ngaphambili.
Enkosi lungehloniphekileyo mongameli.
Honorable Speaker, akhona amazwe azimisela ukuthi asebenzane kakuhle nathi. Hanse ribuyisana le dinaga tse dingwe. Re fumana hore ba ukwana le rona. Le ha bao ba bang ba tshwanang le America ba sa tsamaisane hantle le rona. Nga chimo chenecho riko ita uri mashango othe akone u pfesesa zwavhuḓi uri ri shumisane hani. Dzi tariff hedzinoni dzine dza khou dzheniswa nga muhulwane wa heḽi ya shango linopfi America, vhanzhi a vha tendelani nadzo, fhedzi ngauri ikonomi yavho ndi khulusa kha dzoṱhe idzi ikonomi hafha shangoni, vha fanela uri vha wane nḓila ya u shumisana navho. Na rine ri Afrika Tshipembe ro rali ri khou lingedza nga nḓila dzoṱhe uri ri kone u vha na nyambedzano dzavhuḓi na havhaḽani muhulwane vho Trump. Arali vho vha tshi ḓo ḓa fhano, ndi vhona unga ri tshi ḓo kona uri ri fhedze zwoṱhe. Fhedzi ndi pfa hu tshi pfhi vha nga si ḓe. Hu na tshigwada tshashu tshine tsha khou ḓo ṱuwa zwino kha yeneyi no vhege u ya henengei u yo ambedzana navho. Va ta ri loko va fika lahaya va ta vulavula kahle na vona ku ri hi twanana hi ti-tariff leti, ku ri na hina ti-tariff leti nga vekiwa ti yisiwa hansi. Sweswi ti vekwe ka 30%. Hina hi lava ku ri ti yisiwa hansi swinene ku ri hi kota ku ri loko hi endla trade na vona hi vona ku ri hi nga xavisa swilo swo tala ka vona. So matiko laman'wana a ta kula hi twana kahle na wona. Ni vona ungaku hi ta kota na ku ri lava va Trump hi va fambisa ku ri va twanana na hina loko swi nga endleka. Loko swi nga endleki, hina ke se hi famba ka matiko man'wana. Ni vuye vhiki leri ri nga hela ni huma ka matiko I4 a ni ye kona ku ri hi kota ku va xavisela swilo swo tala. Hi va xavisela tihomu, a ni fambe na Minister Steenhuisen. Ni va xavisela swilo swo tala, a ni fambe na Minister Tau. a ne fambe na va nchaveni na hinkwavo a yi ri kona hinkwerhu hi endla yini re batla gore kgwebo ya rona e tswelle pele hantle re fumane ditšhelete tse dingata gore re ise kgwebo ya South Africa ko pele ke a leboga.
Siyabonga wena wekunene mongameli wethu. Cha ngivile ukuthi namhlanje lelive linetilimi letiningi ngibona labanye sebelokhu bemoyitela nje labanye bexakekile ukuthi abuthini nyalo siva cho 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 cho. Bese siyabonga ngokuthi usikhumbude ukuthi njengalendlu malimi lesinawo njengeMzansi Afrika manyenti. Cha sita ubazama nalabo wena wekunene mkhulu ngajahi. Now we are moving to the fourth question 22, which has been asked by Honorable Malima to the President. The question is whether he has been informed of the recent murder of 7 young persons at Better Life in Philippi, Cape Town. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, whether he is concerned with the escalation of incidences of daily killings and mass murders in Cape Town and the clear indication that the city, the Western Cape Provincial Government and the South African Police Service are not able to protect innocent and vulnerable persons in Cape Town from the marauding gangs. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what immediate to medium-term policy interventions does he intend to put in place to guarantee the safety of persons living in townships in Cape Town? Honorable President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, all South Africans must be concerned at the apparent rise in gangster-related killings in Cape Town as well as in other parts of our country. Every part of society needs to work together in support of our criminal justice system to bring these killings to an end. The murder of 7 young men at the Better Life informal settlement in Philippi is one of the most recent cases of brutality. The Philippi case remains under active investigation by our police. To date, 5 suspects have been apprehended in connection with that crime. The safety, protection, and well-being of all residents remain a central operational priority of the South African Police Service. In response to the persistent threat of gang-related violence, the South African Police Service, in collaboration with the Western Cape Provincial Government and the City of Cape Town, is implementing an integrated, intelligence-led and driven multidisciplinary approach. This is aimed at countering organized criminal networks and restoring stability in affected areas. As part of this broader framework, Operation Lockdown, implemented as a national intervention operation, was launched to stabilize identified high crime precincts through the deployment of specialized national resources and tactical units. Immediate and medium-term policing interventions currently being implemented include enhanced intelligence capability. This involves strengthening intelligence collection, analysis, and dissemination of proactively identify and disrupt gang operations. These interventions also include focused operational deployment. This involves targeted, intelligence-led operations such as Operation Chanela and Project Combat, which focus on the recovery of illegal firearms, dismantling of drug distribution networks, and the apprehension of wanted gang affiliates. Now, the South African Police Service implemented Operation Lockdown 2 to stabilize gang-affected areas in the Western Cape through the deployment of specialized national resources such as National Intervention Unit, Tactical Response Team, and the Public Order Policing. Now, Operation Lockdown 3 has now been launched, integrating the anti-gang unit and intelligence components to sustain high-impact operations across Cape Town and surrounding areas. Through sustained operational focus, intelligence-led policing and strengthened community partnerships, the South African Police Service continues to prioritize the stabilization of gang-affected areas and the protection of innocent and vulnerable persons. The South African Police Provincial Management will continue to monitor progress and to adapt a number of strategies to maintain peace, order, and public confidence. Just a day or two ago, we held the National Security Council. And at that meeting, a much broader strategy of dealing with gang violence was also discussed and outlined, and it will be launched. And it will also involve the utilization and more effective utilization of technology to make sure that we are able, through utilizing technology and all these other aids that we can use, be able to draw all these gangs, all these gang leaders, and all those who are conducting acts of criminality in, have them arrested and have them dealt with. Madam Speaker, I do believe that with the plans and interventions that are now developing as we are continuing to deal with the gang violence issue and extortion, we will be able to bring this gang violence and extortion area of criminality to a halt. I have confidence in that. The police, as well as other criminal justice elements, have been working very hard in working on a very comprehensive plan, which will be supported. And we are also going to make sure that the financial capability thereof is also present so that we're able to deal with this scourge as effectively as we possibly can. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first supplementary question will be taken by Honorable Mailola.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. President, just in the 24-hour period between Tuesday and Wednesday, there were 11 reported murders in Cape Flats, and 4 of those happened just yesterday in Philippi. 44 people were shot in Cape Town over the past weekend, and 26 of those died. These killings are a daily routine in Cape Town, and children are socialized into this kind of violence, such that 14-year-olds are wielding dangerous machine guns and robbing and killing people. This cannot continue unabated, President. What has the state allowed the situation in the Cape Flats to deteriorate to the level that it has? What are the causes of this barbarism? And what tangible commitment can you make today, right now, to the people living in fear in Cape Flats? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable President.
The acts of violence and the killings that, as you correctly say, at times number 26, 40 in a day, are quite concerning. There are issues that the police are dealing with on an ongoing basis. The capturing or the recovery of weapons is also happening. And now with this plan and interventions that I have outlined, we do believe that we have a credible plan. And it is not only going to be focused on Cape Town, it's going to be focused on other provinces as well. Gauteng has exactly the same problem. The Eastern Cape as well has the same problem, and KZN. So those 4 provinces are going to be focused on with regard to the interventions that I've alluded to. And of course, we will not let our eyes down on the other provinces. Gang violence is becoming too rife in our communities. Extortion is becoming too rife. And the police are setting up those various structures, those task teams that are going to be studying very carefully the manifestation of this acts of criminality and dealing with them. I do have the confidence that we will be able to make success. The National Security Council will be meeting again very soon to deal exactly with the actual and detailed plans that the police are going to embark upon. And it will encompass the full criminal justice system. So the suffering that our people are going through is what is prominent in my mind and in the minds of our police and also members in the government. And we will deal with this. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary will be from Honorable N. Maduna.
Mr. President, the only commander-in-chief we have in this country, we must start by stating that we are worried about the continuous developing culture of gangsterism in our communities, especially among young people. Mr. President, given the devastating impact of gang violence on our communities, can you outline concrete steps being taken to address the socio-economic drivers of gangsterism, such as unemployment, lack of opportunities, and how does the government plan to measure the effectiveness of these interventions to ensure we are not just treating the symptoms, but addressing the root causes of violence in our communities in general and townships in particular?
Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Correctly said, Honorable Member, when we deal with incidents of criminality, we should not be superficial. We should deal with the root causes. And clearly the root cause is the economic situation that we find ourselves in as a country. Low economic growth results in our people becoming desperate, looking for short-term solutions to advance their own livelihoods. So we need to therefore be comprehensive and look at ways in which we can increase economic growth, instill more and more confidence for investors to come in and invest. Investors will never come into a situation where there's gang violence, where there's lack of service delivery. So therefore, we need to deal with all these challenges at the same time. Ensure that young people have pathways to gain skills, have pathways to improve their own lives, so that as they develop and grow up, they should be able to see that, yes, there is a future for them. So focusing on economic growth is precisely what we now need.
Order, Honorable Khosa.
Honorable Speaker, we need to have a multi-pronged approach. We should not just deal with acts of criminality, we should also deal with the root causes. How will we be able to measure success? We'll be able to measure success when we see economic growth, more and more young people stay in education, more and more of them get skills and get jobs. We'll be able to see success as the economy grows and the livelihoods of our people get better. When service delivery where they live becomes a lot better. Those will be the key indicators of improvement of their lives or economic growth that will also reduce the acts of criminality. Right now, we are dealing, yes, with a key problem, a big problem, but it is not an intractable problem. We can deal with it. Many other countries have dealt with similar incidents of criminality, and they've been able to make success. I am hoping and I'm confident that we will be able to do so as well. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary will be from Honorable Reverend K.R.J. Mishra.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, Section 12(1)(c) of our Constitution states that everyone has the right to freedom and security of the person, which includes the right to be free from all forms of violence from either public or private sources. Given that over 700 suspected gang members were arrested in Cape Town between April and October this year, and gang violence continues to escalate in the Cape Flats, will the president accede to calls to have constitutional amendments that would allow provinces such as the Western Cape, that is ravaged by gang violence, to introduce new innovative measures within the law to fight crime and gang violence, in particular in the Western Cape? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We want gang violence, as I was saying earlier, to be fought throughout the country, not only in Gauteng, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, or the Western Cape. We are one unitary state, and we have a lot to learn from each other. So if there are innovative ways of being able to fight criminality, yes, we want them to be brought to the fore. Yes, we want the utilization of various instruments that will lead to lowering acts of criminality. I just said earlier that we also want to utilize technology. Many other countries have succeeded in bringing down levels of criminality by utilizing modern methods of technology. There would be artificial intelligence, there could be digital technologies that we could utilize. And of course, there could be the continued presence, boots on the street that will do so. But more importantly, and I saw this clearly demonstrated by one of the residents in Gauteng, a lady who was saying, we as community members must work together. And she was saying the people who are committing crimes are known to us. That's what she said. I have often said that, but I was rather glad when she said so. And she was one of those who were either a victim of criminality or a neighbor of a victim of the criminality that had just happened. And she was making a plea to community members in the area that if we all work together, we will be able to snuff out all these criminals and get them out of our communities, because she said, we know them. And she went further to say, sometimes we hide them. We hide them and don't want them to be disclosed. And therefore, as we have often said, policing or fighting crime should be seen as a community-based process where all of us, it's not only the police will never be able to be everywhere at the same time. Sometimes we expect the police to conduct miracles. And at times when criminality happens, it happens in private spaces. So therefore, we need to work together. Quite often, members of the community know who stole what. They know who broke into somebody's house. They know who carries a gun illegally. They know who shot whose child. They know, and we say, let us therefore all work together as the police, as members of the community, as businesses, as religious organizations, sports organizations. If we all join hands, we will be able to bring down the levels of criminality in our country. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ismail Musa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. His Excellency, Mr. President, we need a serious action plan, a proactive, effective plan to curb crime. Based on 2025 SAPS and city personnel data and police to population estimates since 2021, there are currently 1,313 less SAPS officers and an estimate of 230 detective vacant posts in the Western Cape. SAPS Provincial has led to many SAPS stations being under-resourced and ill-equipped, with many SAPS vehicles non-operational. and I know this is the case with many of the other police stations in the provinces as well. In saving lives, Mr. President, what urgent, effective mechanisms will Mr. President put in place to fill the vacant post in SEPs and increase the visibility, as stated earlier, the boots on the ground, to effectively eradicate serious crime and violence? Because these crimes and violence are hotspot areas across our country. Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The shortage of police officials, the absence of key people in key positions is definitely a problem. And it is also a budgetary problem. In the past 3 or so years, we determined that we should employ more and more police. And I think we have employed up to 30,000 more police. Because at the time, the then Minister of Police said, we are falling behind when it comes to the ratio between police and the people, population versus police officials. We increase, but we need to increase more. We need to increase more of the people who will be on the ground fighting crime, not so much sitting in the office, because our people are struggling and suffering at the ground level. So efforts are being made to get more resources, to get more capability, financial and otherwise, to ensure that we fill those positions. And the utilization of technology will also help, because when you use technology, you are then able to use it that can actually help to fill up the various positions that may not be filled at the moment. But it is a matter that we are concerned about, to fill up positions, and particularly at the police station level, because that is where criminality takes place. So we will be focusing on that as well. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable President. Question number 23 has been asked by the Honourable Hadebe. The question is, given the growing crisis of illegal migration in the Republic, which, according to various experts and civil society representatives, continue to strain public resources, undermine national security, and fuel social tensions, and given the calls for decisive government action to repatriate those who are in the Republic unlawfully while promoting legal and skills-based migration, what policy interventions does he intend to initiate to address the crisis of the estimated 15% of undocumented foreign nationals? And how will the government coordinate law enforcement and home affairs to enforce immigration laws and secure the Republic's borders? The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. There are quite a number of interventions that we intend to embark upon. And so you know, the leaders of the Government of National Unity held their retreat just this past weekend, and one of the issues that was prominently on the table was the issue of migration, more particularly the influx of illegal immigrants into our country. One of the most important interventions to tackle the problem of illegal immigration is to secure our borders. The newly established Border Management Authority has deployed 600 border guards at vulnerable segments of our country border system to prevent illegal migrants that are undocumented and are inadmissible from entering the country. I was talking to the leader of the BMA, and he was saying, Mr. President, we are making great success because we have, and he told me the time frame, been able to stop thousands of people from flooding into our country. So the BMA has demonstrated the effectiveness of modern technology, like the utilization of drones. Minister Schreiber has also related to me how the utilization of these drones has been most effective. They're also using body cameras in creating a more secure and digital border environment. Dr. Masia Pato was telling me, the leader of the BMA, that even as we will be having a flood of visitors to the G20, those who receive our visitors will be having body cameras. And that, in many ways, is the utilization of technology to make sure that we get rid of any form of corruption, any form of fraud, and we're able to ensure that those who interface with those who want to come into our country see that they are dealing with professionals. Phase 1 of the electronic travel authorization system is currently being rolled out for the G20 delegates. Over 200 applications have already been seamlessly processed by this new system, which uses machine learning to verify the authenticity of documents and facial recognition to secure immigration process. Following the stabilization phase around the G20, electronic travel authorization will be open for tourist visas and other visa categories. This will ultimately lead to the automation of entry and exit processes at our borders, including land borders. This will eliminate the space for the abuse of paper-based and manual processes through biometric verification and digital transformation. Another area of work is to detect, apprehend, and deport illegal migrants in our country. This is mainly done through intelligence-driven joint operations planned and executed by the Department of Home Affairs and the Inland Inspectorate and other structures. These structures are coordinated and account to the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management and our net joints. In the past financial year, over 51,000 illegal immigrants were deported. Engagements with countries whose nationals are frequent transgressors are ongoing through discussions with their embassies, and these matters are also included as an agenda item on the binational commissions that we have with the various countries. So this is to ensure that the implication of illegal migration is understood. Illegal immigration does place a great deal of strain on our social services, and it also undermines our national security. Many of our people were very disturbed when they saw how, after a horrible bus crash which killed many people, people were seen to have hoarded a lot of medical medicines, which they were taking to their various countries. And a number of these people were not documented. So South Africans are justifiably concerned about the issue of undocumented migrants who come to our country. We should not, however, allow vigilante acts targeting national or foreign nationals, as these do not solve the problem and they just undermine the rule of law. Instead, we need to address this challenge by strengthening the enforcement of our laws and the resourcing of the border management capabilities. But as we strengthen prevention through the border management process, we need also to strengthen enforcement. The Immigration Act prohibits anyone from employing illegal foreigners who are not documented. This law prescribes the employment of an illegal, undocumented immigrant as an offense that is punishable through imprisonment or a fine, or both imprisonment or a fine. And the Labor Relations Act and the Basic Conditions of Employment Act does protect foreign nationals who are certificated and documented. But we must now state it very clearly. I want to state it very clearly that employers who continue to employ people who are not documented are committing an offense. And we are going to make sure that those employers stop what they are doing, because South Africans are most unhappy. And they have a sense that the jobs that they should be performing are being taken from them by those who are not documented, but particularly by those employers who practice acts such as employing people from other countries undocumented because they are cheap labor. So they are committing an offense, and I call on employers, they must stop employing people who are not properly documented. And this is not xenophobic on our side. We welcome, and we've always welcomed workers from other countries who are certificated, who are documented. And we should also know that South Africans, even as they go to other countries, they can't just walk into a country and say, I want a job without being documented or certificated. Other countries require those who work in their countries to be documented. So we require exactly the same thing here. So employers must be warned that if they continue with this practice, it is an offense, they can be fined, and they can be put in prison. So clear warning to all employers. We must follow what the law prescribes in this regard. The Department of Labor has presented an Employment Services Amendments Bill that is to introduce quotas, as it were. Now, the department has, together with Home Affairs, been conducting a number of inspections, and they have been making great success. The operations that are being conducted by Deputy Minister Jomo Sibiya and other multidisciplinary colleagues are having fruit, but we want employers to make sure that they do not employ undocumented people. They must make sure that they stick by the terms of our law. And this is what will ensure that we create more employment for our people, we create more economic opportunities, and so that South Africans must not have a sense that their jobs are being taken away by people who are not documented. However, we do welcome people who are documented. They can always come and work in our country because we need their skills. We need their know-how. We also need the investment that they bring into our country. And this is the very progressive process that we should all embark upon moving forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Honorable President, recognizing that the issue of illegal migration extends beyond South Africa's borders and is deeply rooted in regional instability, economic inequality, and weak governance structures within the parts of SADC region, what concrete diplomatic and policy measures is the Government of National Unity pursuing through SADC frameworks to enhance joint border management, harmonize migration and labor mobility policies, strengthen data sharing and early warning systems on irregular migration, and promote regional economic development that addresses the push factors driving large-scale migration into South Africa? I thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. As I said, we're using and will continue to use a multidisciplinary approach in dealing with this matter. People throng to our country because they are facing economic challenges in their own country. In a way, they are economic migrants or refugees. However, we would like those who come to our country to be properly documented. But at the same time, through diplomatic means, as I said, through binational commissions that we have with various countries, we discuss these matters. And we argue that we should have a regional approach and strategy of dealing with issues of migration. But more importantly, it is also important that all countries in the region should promote economic growth so that we can see the economies of various countries in our region growing. And that will forestall the need for people to want to come to our country. So we need to have a much more comprehensive approach and policy that will promote the economic growth, not only of ourselves, but various countries in our region. And it is to this end that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will play an important role to enhance trading amongst all of our nations, not only in Southern Africa, but on the continent. And that in itself will then, yes, promote the movement of people. And the movement of people must be on a documented basis. People must be able to, yes, move seamlessly throughout the region, but properly documented and properly permitted. So if we approach it in a coordinated fashion on a multidisciplinary basis, we will be able to see virtual progress that will grip the entire region. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Ruiz.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable President, we welcome the no-nonsense progress that has been made under Minister Leon Schreiber at the Border Management Authority, with a staggering increase of triple the number of illegal border crossings stopped in the last festive season alone. However, for the BMA to fully deliver on its mandate, it needs to be properly funded and equipped in terms of the Act. The BMA was formally established as a Schedule 3A entity, a public entity, on the 1st of April 2023. So it's been 2 years and 7 months since the SAPS border police have not been integrated into the BMA. So, Honourable President, will you commit to ensuring that the transfer of SAP's border units to the BMA will be finalised in full in compliance with the Act? And within what time frame can the nation expect this to be completed?
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. When I appointed Minister Schreiber to be Minister of Home Affairs, he was overjoyed to find that the BMA is in place and that it is working. Now, Minister Schreiber gives me reports on an ongoing basis. And he often says, Mr. President, I could not be happier because I have really dedicated people in Home Affairs. And he is now an addition to a team that is really doing good work. So we need to look at the entire team and encourage them because they play a critical role. You're absolutely right that having set up the BMA, and let me add, the BMA took a long time to be set up. And some of the problems were here in this house because there were, I suppose, when reforms have to be implemented, it takes time for those who have a monopoly of control over certain processes to let go. And they have to be nudged, they have to be taken for. This is where I wish I was a dictator, because then it would just happen like that. So our constitution is such that, and the laws that you all have passed are such that, you know, you nudge people along and you dot every T and you cross every comma and all that. But it is getting there. And you want to know, when will the South African police be fully integrated? They will be. We're working on that, and I'm not able to give you a time frame. But the BMA, I promise you, is one of the great reforms that we have implemented in the past 2 administrations. It's a good thing because it works in other countries, and we were too slow as South Africans to lead up to where we are with the BMA. Now, resourcing the BMA is another important task. We have been, because of our economic situation, we have scaled back on resourcing the Defense Force, the police, and the BMA, and correctional services, and we are now gearing up more and more to resource these entities. And Minister Schreiber will soon be smiling when he hears that, yes, there will be a little bit more additional money that will be given to the BMA. And so will the others as well. So we're making progress. But let's not make the progress that we are making one-dimensional. It must be multidimensional. It must be the entire government of national unity that is working together to effect the progress that we are making. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Letlape.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And welcome home, Mr. President, from Asia.
Yes.
Since we are a nation with a friendly, all who live in it, rights-based approach, with stressed social services, how will the President ensure that the pain of taking care of our guests in health services is not only borne by the ordinary who rely on public services, but by all South Africans, especially members of this House, to be able to make actions of groups like Dudola and Much Too Much not necessary? As for example, the President has spoken about beautifying the cities for our guests from G20. Can we also ensure that our guests that need social services see the best side of South Africa by being taken care of where we go for our health care, in the private
Thank
sector,
you, Honourable Letlape.
not where we have distressed services?
The Honourable President.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, it's been very disturbing, and it continues to be disturbing to see how ordinary people are being forced out of our health services just because they come from other countries. This is not us. This is un-South African. This is not Ubuntu. Now, our Ubuntu characteristic must be clearly played out in how we deal with people from other countries as well. It must be clearly put on display in promoting and respecting their dignity and treating them just as we want to be treated. When the apartheid government forced many of our compatriots outside of our country, we were well treated. When O.R. Tambo and many others went to various locales, not only on our continent, but globally, they were well received, well treated. And it is a real blight on the character of our nation to see how South Africans will take the trouble of going to hospitals and clinics and taking people out and preventing them from being treated. This is not what our Constitution is all about. Our Constitution is about the respect of the rights of people. It's not only the respect of the rights of certain people, all people. Much as we have challenges in our resources, in our hospitals and clinics, it does not mean that we have to be cruel. It does not mean that we have to treat other people badly. So what those organizations have been doing is un-South African. It's not us. They don't represent who we are. And we must all say so. Well, that's not who we are. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Kwankwa.
President, thank you very much. The crisis of illegal immigration in South Africa continues to affect ordinary citizens, particularly in the labour market, as you've already highlighted. President, in this regard, the hypocrisy of some of the African countries on this issue cannot continue to go unchallenged. Across the African continent, governments defend their labor markets. Zimbabwe's indigenization policy is one example. Tanzania's business licensing order excludes non-citizens from many trades. Ghana's Investment Promotion Act reserves certain occupations for Ghanaians. We have raised this matter on numerous occasions, that there needs to be a reserve policy, especially for South Africans, to ensure that we protect certain sectors for them. Even the African peer review mechanism, the country report in 2007, warned us that we should address the unfair competition that takes place between locals and illegal immigrants in policy and in law. The question I want to ask, why does the government continue to deny South Africans such a protection, especially for informal trading and other issues? And why have you failed to act against employers who have employed illegal immigrants for decades? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the last issue that Honourable Kwankwa raises is being addressed. I spoke to it, and I have made it clear that employers who employ undocumented migrants will be dealt with. And they now need to know more clearly and firmly that they will be prosecuted and they will be fined and they could even be arrested, because it is an offense to do so. Now, that whole process has also been constrained by the availability of the various inspectors and personnel, but there is now an intergovernmental working together structure that is going to enhance all that. And hence, we are now saying to employers, be aware that you will be prosecuted if you employ undocumented people. Now, when it comes to businesses, the departments that deal with business operations like DTIC, like the small business, are working on precisely how we should respond to this. Because as you correctly say, many other countries, even on our continent, do have either quotas or do have preventative regulations about the conducting of businesses by people who do not have documentation to be in South Africa. It does not mean that you ban completely. It means that it needs to be properly regulated, properly permitted, properly registered. So that is precisely what is being worked on. When we went through the issue of food poisoning, we embarked on a process of getting small businesses that are dealing either in the township or rural areas, the so-called spaza shops, to be properly registered. That process continues. And through that, we are able to see exactly the incidents of people who are from other countries who may not be permitted to be here, and a clearer policy will be crafted in that regard. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
We now move on to the last question. Mr. President, this is quite a long question, so I don't know if you want to rest your legs, perhaps. The last question has been asked by the Honourable Makubela. Yes. The question is, in light of the global economic trade flow disruptions arising from unilateral imposition of tariffs, the investment confidence challenges that negatively impact the domestic industry performance and economic growth prospects, and the Cabinet's recently endorsed economic response package to the 30% tariffs imposed by the United States of America, there is now also an imminent imposition of 50% European Union tariffs on the steel industry. What is the government's comprehensive response to the global economic volatility that negatively impacts the major domestic industries, particularly the steel and related sectors? How will the government's ambitious strategic investment drive as part of its investment strategy to boost foreign direct investment reinforce direct investment in the productive sectors of the economy to ignite industrial growth, localization, and diversification? The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker and honourable members. Part of a comprehensive response to global economic trade flow disruptions is the acceleration of the diversification of markets and products of the South African exports. While we are actively engaged with both the European Union and the United States on negotiating trade agreements, we are prioritizing the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and expanding export initiatives to established as well as emerging markets globally. The aim is to expand opportunities for South African products across a range of sectors to develop increased resilience of South African exports in dynamic global markets and to manage the risk that results from targeting too few markets. While the recent tariffs are likely to disrupt export flows, they can also serve as a catalyst for deeper continental integration and faster implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area's trade liberalization as well as industrialization agenda. Now, our country's strategic investment drive aims to attract increased foreign direct investment and reinforce domestic investment in key productive sectors. Priority areas include manufacturing, renewable energy, mining beneficiation, ICT, agriculture, and agro-processing. These are all important for expanding industrial capacity in our country and also promoting localization and creating sustainable employment. Over the past few months, I have personally engaged with many investors to ensure that we both understand impediments to investment and work closely with ministers to ensure that we create an investor-friendly environment. In my recent trip to these 4 countries, as I said, a number of ministers came along, and some we traveled together on the Inkwazi, the plane that the president uses. And in one of those trips, Minister Steenhuisen, Minister Nchabeni, and Lamula were in, and Steenhuisen said, "Oh, Mr. President, there isn't even a drink on this plane." And he said, "This looks like a Santaco plane." But we were scouring the whole Southeast Asian basin, and we were seeing a number of investors, a number of governments, and I do believe that there is a deep hunger in those markets to trade with our country. And in some ways, there are markets that we had not really laid more emphasis on. And now, because the crisis that we're facing with the United States has created an opportunity for us, a great opportunity, and they also see exactly the same, because most of their trade has been directed towards exploiting that very big market of some 260, 270 people. Now they want to diversify. So we have been at work to try and diversify our markets through strategic infrastructure investment in our own country in energy and transport and digital systems. We are improving industrial competitiveness, reducing the cost of doing business, and supporting long-term economic growth. Because for us to be able to capture the prospect and the promise of those markets, we do need, in more ways than one, to improve ourselves, to make ourselves much more attractive to investors to come and invest here. And we've been telling those we've been meeting that we are the gateway into the African continent, and correctly so, they also realize it. This is further advanced through policy and regulatory reforms that we have embarked upon to make our country much more of an investment-friendly country. Now, partnerships with the private sector and development finance institutions are being used to mobilize capital for strategic projects while promoting green and inclusive industrialization. The B20 process, which is part of the G20 whole system, is taking place alongside the G20 and is an important opportunity as many business people from various companies will be thronging to our country to be part of the G20 process under the aegis of the B20. And we will then have in many bilateral opportunities and seek partnerships, and I do believe achieve greater understanding of the many opportunities that we will display to them and showcase. All these interventions that we are making are aligned with our country's commitments under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is aimed at diversifying the economy, strengthening local value chains, and positioning our country as a leading investment destination on the continent. None of the various companies that we met, including countries, sees anything negative with us. They just want to come and invest here. But we should not rest on our laurels. We should improve ourselves so that we become an success and a center of great investment that they can come and place here. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Makubela.
Thank you, Honorable President. I must say your response was very comprehensive, fair, and balanced. But President, given the vulnerability of the domestic steel and the manufacturing sectors that are prone to tariff-induced market distortions and the global value chain disruptions, what additional policy instruments or trade diplomacy measures will be prioritized to protect South Africa's industrial base and safeguard the many jobs that are prone to the vulnerability of these tariffs? Lastly, Mongameli, what are the additional plans that you have to expand market access for value-added exports and to promote intra-African integration in response to this rising global protectionism? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The answer is a very simple and straightforward one, and it's the one that I guess we are being taught by those that we continue to meet, particularly various governments. And they are all crying out for free trade agreements with us because they say they want to deal directly with us as South Africa, because they see us not only as a great market, as the most industrialized country on the continent, but they also see us, as I said, as a gateway into our continent. They are yearning for free trade agreements with us. Now, of course, because we are part of SACU, we've got to balance and be able to negotiate and to consult our neighbors. But nearly all the countries that we've had interactions with see the need for free trade agreements with us so that we can trade effectively with them. And this they put forward as a response to the pressures that they are also facing by being put under pressure by the tariffs that not only the United States, but also Europe. And these two markets are big markets, and we have tended to focus on them, but they also want to turn and diversify as we now need to. Of course, it does not mean that we sort of soft pedal on increasing our trade with Europe and the United States. We do both. And in a way, we burn the candle on both sides and make sure that we do intensify the export of our products to the United States, to Europe, but to other new markets, including our own continent. So we need to reach agreements, and we need, from a diplomatic point of view, have good relations, top-class relations on a bilateral basis with those countries, because we found that when bilateral relations are improved or are set up between two countries, the business community tends to rally behind this diplomatic agreements that will have been reached. And to this end, those that we visited, we've invited to come to South Africa on state visit so that we can consolidate the relations between us and them. A number of our ministers and the Deputy President have been going around various parts of the world, including our continent, and the task has always been, let's go and hunt down markets where our products can go. So a great deal of work continues to be done in this regard. There is not a moment that we let slip. And as we go around, Deputy President, myself, we hold business for us. We either take business people from our country and meet business people on the other end and discuss opportunities that there are in our country. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Smith.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Mr. President, South Africa's investment strategy is also derailed by non-tariff barriers rooted in our country's failed domestic policies, such as broad-based black economic empowerment, facilitating rampant corruption, and the self-enrichment of the political elite, which massively dissuades trade and foreign direct investment. If growing the economy and creating jobs is so important to you, what reforms to domestic policies, such as the failed BEE, are you prepared to make to jumpstart foreign direct investment and get our economy working for all South Africans?
The Honourable President.
Honourable Smith, as I was looking right across, I kept locking my eyes into yours, expecting you to ask a really, really intelligent question. But now, let me say this to you, and I don't say it from an ideological point of view. There's no ideology. It's just fact. What you may perceive as non-tariff barriers, like some of our policies, I promise you, is never raised in any locale where we go. And wherever, and I promise you, this is what often happens. And even ministers who are with me were just amazed because I become so energized. I will hold up to 10, 15 meetings, and largely with businesses, enticing them to come. And they appreciate that they come to meet us. And as they meet us, they say, we want to invest in your country because we see your country as being stable, industrialized, having the rule of law, and is attractive to investment. I promise you, not a single word have I heard about what you're saying. And recently we went to Malaysia. Now, in 1994, post-1994, the new government in our country sought to learn how we can foster transformation. Transformation that they had already embarked upon, that was aimed at bringing those who were deliberately, but in their case not legally, who were left out of the mainstream of the economy. They embarked on a transformational policy change, which they call Bumiputra. And they explained to us that it has achieved great ends, great progress, and they are continuing with it. And they say, we can see that you have copied what we have sought to do. You are still young in your democracy. You still need to do what we have done, to integrate those who were relegated to the back of the economy into the mainstream of your economy. And Honorable Smith, that for me is the overriding message. Overriding message is We need to integrate those who were relegated to the back of our economy into the economy. And that integration means skills. It means people must live next to where they work. The special apartheid architecture that we had. In some ways, we've continued with it to a great fault, but we also need to give people opportunities that will enable them to be players in the economy of their own country. In the past, people who look like me were not given the opportunity. In fact, there were laws that said you may not get into this job. You may not do business in this place. So I often ask when people like you raise this issue, what are we then to do? What should we do? Should we leave things as they are? Or should we do what others have done? Now, let me give you another example. The women in our country, black and white, were also relegated to the back. What should we do? Should we just say, you women, stay at the back, stay in the kitchen where you belong? My answer is no. We are not going to allow the women of our country, the black people of our country, to be relegated to the back. We must pass laws that will make women to play a key role in the economy of their country. We must get rid of the disparity of pay between men and women. There must be a law that deals with that. Is that wrong or right? I believe it is the right thing to do. Sorry, but I'll keep looking at you. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Gama.
Mr. President, you are quite a wordsmith. Protagonist
Thank you.
And purveyors of opportunity always talk about this issue of never wasting a good crisis. And I think you've outlined that, or at least the principles around that. The bilateral trade war is not about preserving current policy space, but about securing market access and development. And I think we agree on that. But other than the meek 10-point plan that you've been mulling on recently, what are the practical steps that your government has taken to strengthen domestic state institutions so that we can create jobs and also stimulate economic growth that can go beyond 4-7%? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Now,
Honourable member on the platform, please mute your microphone. Honourable members in general, if you are online, please make sure that you are muted. You are interrupting proceedings. My apologies, Mr. President. Please proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. One of the key priorities that we set out as the Government of National Unity is to foster economic growth. And one of those is to strengthen the capacity of the state. Faced with a fiscal position that is not ideal and weak, we have resolved that what we need to do is to embark on reforms that are going to reposition our state-owned enterprises. Because, as many of us know, our state-owned enterprises went through enormous challenges, and many of them went into reversal, accumulating a lot of debt for a whole number of reasons. And what we've sought to do is to ensure that we embark on reforms and mobilize finance so that they operate a lot better. Now, we may not agree from an ideological point of view on whether, for instance, we should do what other countries continue to do, and we saw it to good effect in Vietnam, a communist country, where they have embarked on reforms of their state-owned electricity entity in the same way that we are proceeding forward, where generation has been separated, where transmission continues to be owned by the state.
Honourable Klute, please mute yourself. Apologies, Mr. President.
Now, all this is aimed at improving the operations of those entities, whilst the state continues to play a key role. We're doing the same thing with our logistics complex, where we're improving our harbors and utilizing what others continue to do, concession those out so that we crowd in capital and make sure that there's a better utilization of the financial resources. And through that, be able to use that as, if you like, a flywheel that will continue driving economic growth, which will then manifest itself in the private sector operations, privately owned companies, and so on. But where the state continues to play a critical role, both as an owner, as a regulator, and also, yes, as a manager in some of those institutions. Now, we're delineating clear roles of what needs to be done. And as we do so, we are attracting capital, which is in great need on our part, capital that we will be able to utilize to good effect. And some of the things that we have done in the past have actually paid us fairly good dividends. You know, we built the N3, the main economic artery of our country, by concessioning. It was built with private sector money. It is now coming back to be fully owned by the state. We've used other people's money to make our infrastructure better. And the state, being an intelligent and an innovative player in the economy, deploying resources, deploying capabilities in a way that will advance the economic growth of our country, is a good thing to do. And the state, not what other people on the other side of this house may think we are privatizing. No, we are not. We are actually strengthening the capability of our state-owned enterprises. Now, many of those had really been destroyed, almost completely destroyed. We are rebuilding them, we are capacitating them, and we're also bringing really good people with good integrity to run those state-owned enterprises. And I think we will make great progress as we move on. So I can say, watch this space. This is going to be a good space for our country. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mulder.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable President. It is very important that we find new markets for our products. But just as important, I believe, is to attract effective direct foreign investment. In the furthering of government's ambitious strategic investment drive, I think that it's very important that we try to reduce the tariffs currently being put against our country and against our products, be that from the US or from Europe. I would like to ask if you could share with us perhaps what progress are being made at this stage with regard to our trade negotiations to get a trade deal, and if a mandate was also given to the negotiators with regard to the export of the critical minerals after beneficiation in South Africa? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. We are making progress. You will recall that when we visited the United States, it was one of those visits that I had with a number of our ministers and some leading South Africans. And that in many ways laid a foundation for us to be able to interact with the US government. Following that visit, we started talks on a text basis. Now, those discussions are ongoing. And may I add that there was a time when the US government said, following that visit, they have now taken us higher up the list of countries that they had to deal with. I remember once talking to President Trump, and he was saying he's having to deal with 196 countries and all that. And the text-based negotiations are now going on. And our team, as I said earlier, will be going back to the United States. They are already being well received. They are already able to sit down to talk about the trade issues. And of course, the discussions, Honorable Mulder, also touch on non-tariff issues. But we have been able to say we are prepared to even talk about the non-tariff issues. The good thing is that the noise between our two countries has quietened down, and we are now engaged in serious discussions with the United States, particularly their trade office. And that for us is a great advance. Let me add that a number of other countries are still in the woods discussing trade issues with that big market, and they are nowhere near any form of conclusion. So we do believe that we're making progress, and we should be able to see an agreement sooner, I would say, rather than later. And I'm hoping that it will be a great deal sooner. And one has to know that they are having to deal with so many countries after Liberation Day announcement. They are dealing with a plethora of countries. So we need to be more understanding with that, much as we cannot be understanding as South Africans. And of course, we do want our critical minerals. Our critical minerals, as I said in my earlier reply, to be beneficiated here so that we are able to export value-added products. And let me say that the messages that we've been beaming to the world about this matter are actually sinking in. You may recall that during COVID, one of the things that we did say during COVID is that we as African countries, we want to have the right to manufacture our own vaccines. That was unheard of. Together with India, we even went to the World Trade Organization and sued, or rather insisted that we need, as countries in the Global South, to have the intellectual property transferred to us so that we should manufacture our own vaccines. Now that lit the light for many countries, and they realized that yes, it is unfair for us not to have the right to manufacture our vaccines. So we went from message to engagement, and it is now at the World Trade Organization leading to finalization, hopefully. Now, even on critical minerals, we've gone from the African countries being completely exploited with the extraction activities of the global north. And now we are at a stage where we are beaming a very strong message. And it's a message that is being embraced by many other countries on our continent. And of course, as South Africa, being the industrialized country that we are, we have the capability to add value to the minerals that we produce. But we want to see more and more of that value being processed here, and particularly closer to the communities where the minerals are extracted. So the message is sinking, and we want to push the envelope more and more so that we are able to beneficiate. And we have proven to the world that South Africa is a reservoir of many critical minerals that are needed in the manufacture of many products that are needed worldwide. And as we push this envelope, we're doing it for the rest of the continent as well. G20 process has given us the opportunity to put this matter firmly on the agenda. It is being discussed, and it will be in the declaration that the world or the G20 countries will now adopt. So we are making progress. And as we make progress, we continue to raise the South African flag. And through the G20 process, our flag is going to be flying higher and higher, and forever leading to the development of our economy to improve the livelihoods of all South Africans. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members, that concludes questions to the President, and I thank the Honourable President. Honourable members, I request that members stand and wait for the presiding officer and the mace to leave the chamber. That concludes the business of the day, and the House is adjourned.